Hello, Abigail here with the astrology of Sagittarius season. This season is very spicy, partially because it's a fire sign, but also we have some unique astrology that'll be happening during this time, just based on the year that we've had and where we are in this current cycle. So I'm going to go over what those things are, and then we'll go kind of day by day over the major shifts and transits. But yeah, this one is interesting. It is very colored by the fact that Mars has been really involved in things. But the kind of main feature, there's kind of two, but one of them is the Mercury retrograde. Yes, folks, that one, the one we're currently in, that is now in Scorpio, started in Sagittarius at 9 degrees, going to 20 degrees of Scorpio. It is intense and a lot, specifically made more so by the fact that we had a Mars right before Mercury's, not right before, but like a little before Mercury stationed, we had that Mars conjunction in Scorpio. And then we had that Mars conjunction with the retrograde Mercury in Sagittarius. And in Capricorn season, we will have, guess what, folks? A Mars conjunction in Capricorn with Mercury. So there's this trifecta of Martian energy happening within this bigger story of the retrograde. The retrograde is going to go from, the 9th of November to the 29th. But because of the post shadow period, pretty much all of Sagittarius season, except for like the last 3 to 4 days, is going to be in that post Mercury retrograde shadow. And what does that mean? It means that Mercury is no longer retrograde, but it is moving back through that 20 to 9 degrees of Sagittarius. 20 degrees of Scorpio, 9 degrees of Sagittarius. So yes, Mercury will be direct. Things will be moving a little more progressively, but we are still dealing with the themes of the Mercury retrograde, which is why it's always a good idea to kind of pay attention to what's going on, because when we head back through those degrees, you're going to get an even better view of what you were experiencing, processing, working through during the retrograde when we're in that post-retrograde shadow. And that, like I said, is pretty much all of the Sagittarius season. So if you are Mercury ruled like me, so Gemini rising, Virgo rising, then just know that that's what we're dealing with. And if you are any of the other signs, it also affects you, just maybe not quite as pointed. Although if you have a prominent Mercury placement or you have a sun in it, moon, it can impact you pretty intensely as well. One of these days we should do a study on how each placement gets affected. I'm sure there is one out there somewhere. Anyways, so that is one of the primary things. Another primary thing is that now that we're kind of out of Scorpio land, Mercury and Venus will be the last planets to kind of move through. But once we're in Sagittarius, we go into something called a nodal square. So the lunar nodes, which are the eclipse nodes, are in Pisces and Virgo. And Mars is going to go into a square. The sun's going to go into a square. Pretty much everybody is going to have a square with the nodes. And when we have a square with the nodes, it very much brings back those eclipse themes and energies that you dealt with during eclipse season. If you haven't done specific work that the eclipses were pushing for, these squares will bring that work back up. If you have done it, it can be a great moment of being like, I did that. That's what I'm hoping for as someone who ignored eclipse energy lessons and then had to face it a few weeks later. I'm really hoping that these squares, though difficult, highlight the effort I've put in. It's very Taurus of me. But that's going to be an overarching theme because it's going to hit each different planet at a different time. And I'm pretty for sure we won't even quite have the Mercury Venus square by the time we're through Sagittarius season, but we will be sitting right in those degrees as we turn over into Capricorn season. So there's going to be this kind of continued tension throughout that's going to follow us into Capricorn season from Sagittarius season. It does feel as though, especially with Jupiter stationing retrograde right before, it feels as though, because this is a Jupiter ruled sign, that the Sagittarius season is going to feel a little more tense and tight. A lot of times it's a time to kick back and really enjoy stuff. Caveat, depending on your chart, if you have a really spicy placement for that or house placement for your Sagittarius, maybe it isn't fun. But it can be a time when things are a bit looser and more free. And we do have our exalted Jupiter on board, but it will be retrograde. So we will be having to really dig internally for our joy and our motivation and our ability to find what we want in a Sagittarian way. it will not be found in the externals, which is often where Sagittarius can find a lot of energy. I find Sagittarians are really good at outsourcing energy from external places and then bringing it into a more personal space. And in this season, we're going to be kind of going the opposite way, where we're going to be digging in deep and kind of pushing that Sagittarius outward. I think to live a good and happy life, you kind of have to learn to do both, where you kind of pull the energy and extend it. And so this is a practice in that, in kind of learning a different way to Sagittarius. If you have a Sagittarius placement, this is for you. So the nodal squares are going to kind of add a bit of an eclipse vibe to this season, us having really pivotal, guys, Mercury's retrograde, pivotal moments across the season as we have these squares that are going to happen. And you can watch my videos, weekly videos, to know when those are happening, because I didn't want to put it in the transit thing. But what are the major things that are happening? Kind of what are the major planetary events that are happening? Starting off on the 28th of November, we have Saturn direct. This is the last time that Saturn will be in Pisces for another 28-ish years. So this direct is that beginning of the final pass through the final degrees before we shift. So we have 4 degrees to move through before we head back into Aries, which is going to happen in early February. Yeah, big time. Big times. So beginning of the year, another red letter one, by the way, with all the shifts. We had that Pluto shift in 2025 early, and this year we're in the nodal shift, and then this year we're going to have, the kind of February onward, we are going to have all of this Saturn, Neptune moving into Aries energy, along with Uranus eventually moving back into Gemini, and kind of finishing this great migration of the planets that we started last year. Well, technically started the year before last with Pluto, but really got dug into this past year in 2025, and then we'll be finalizing in 2026. And as I've been saying to people, for most of us, a lot of our long-term stuff is up in the air, and you really don't want it to get settled anyways until I think earliest summer of 2026. So be okay with this transition time and period. It's also very Sagittarius to be like, just be chill with it. And then on the 29th, immediately after, we have Mercury stationing direct at 20 degrees. And this is also part of that story, is these direct planets kind of playing with each other as our dear friend Mercury finishes up its trines, its final trine with Saturn and Neptune, and Venus will have its final trines with Saturn and Neptune. So yeah, a really kind of beautiful dance in the sky. And Venus will have that moment with Saturn while it is retrograde, and then it'll have its final moment with Neptune right before, on the 30th, it goes into Sagittarius, which honestly probably funnest part of this season is Venus going into Sagittarius. Venus doesn't have any specific kind of dignity in Sagittarius. It is very playful and fun and loves to try new things and to really connect to other people and things. I think it is going to be the counterbalance to Jupiter being retrograde, to Mercury retrograde, to have this kind of lighter, brighter Venus. Just know it's not going to happen until we're kind of in the midway point between, November and December. But it is definitely, for me, it feels like kind of a breath of fresh air, to be honest, to get that bit of joy and optimism that a fire Venus has, especially one that isn't in detriment, such as Aries. And no hate to Aries Venuses. I have one native. I'm a native with an Aries in Venus. Venus and Aries. Guys, it's hurting my brain, this retrograde. Anyways, then on the 4th of December, we will have a full moon in Gemini, and this full moon is almost an exact square to those nodes. So this full moon is going to feel like an eclipse. It's also, I think, going to feel like a breaking point for some of us, where a tide starts to turn, especially if you have a mutable axis. So if your rising is a mutable rising, if you have the 4 corners of your chart in a mutable sign, this Gemini full moon is really important. And if you do have it there, this is about career and home and the people we're with and ourself, which are the 4 kind of major pillars of a natal chart. So this is a big deal for everybody, but it is a big deal specifically for, I would go even further and say, air signs as well. Air signs, mutable signs. This is a big moment. If you have any planets around the degrees, 13 degrees in a mutable placement, but you can pop 5 degrees on either side of that if you want. This is a really big moment. So kind of put a pin in that November 4th area. And if you remember last year, not November, December 4th, y'all, this video is what it is. Also, if you remember last year, December 12th, so this is December 4th, was the stationing for the Mars retrograde in Gemini. So we're also going to get some of those fun themes coming back. Yay! And it's also interesting because we do have Mars in an opposition in Sagittarius right now. So a lot of reminders and kind of callbacks to last year. And then also a callback to the eclipses that we've had recently and kind of a precursor to our eclipses moving into Pisces season and Aquarius season, because we're starting that Aquarius axis. The nodes won't be shifted till the summer, but we're starting that Aquarius eclipse axis in the late winter. So the Sagittarius season is very much kind of like a precursor slash preemptive moment for us entering into 2025. And like, you're like, obviously, Abigail, it's the season before. Yes, but there are some really specific threads in this one that are kind of pulling us through. Then on the 11th, Mercury goes into Sagittarius. We're so close to being out of the post retrograde shadow at this point. And then on the 15th, Mars goes into Capricorn. Now, Mercury in Sagittarius is in detriment. People say careless things, people be spicy. If you are someone who already speaks your mind, people will be very used to this energy, and you just need to recognize that it might be even more than a lot than normal. If you don't share your mind or you're around people who tend to keep things to themselves, this is the time when the masks come off. So be aware. We've already experienced this energy to a certain degree with the retrograde, so it's nothing crazy new, but we're also coming up on the degrees. We'll be coming up on the degrees where we had that Mars conjunction, which was very, very testy, very spicy. So yeah, Mercury and Sagittarius, you're not going to get a whole lot done. It can be super fun, but it also can piss people off. So just pick your battles wisely. Mercury Sagittarius really screams like 5 of Wands, 5 of Swords vibes in the tarot, which is very much kind of like little fights being picked here and there, people having different passions and not really listening to each other. Very, 5 of Swords, like pick your battles, choose what you want to fight about, because you're not going to have energy to fight about everything that everyone wants to fight about. So just know that we're headed back into that, and it can be fun and it can be freeing, but just make sure that you are recognizing what the weight of your words have. Then Mars in Capricorn, guess what, folks? We're back in kind of a really happy place for Mars. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. And so this is another kind of nice turn in the season on the 15th, where it's like, oh, another kind of key unlocked and a window open, and some of the pressure is released in Sagittarius season. Also, remember, at this point, we're getting close to the end of the post-Mercury retrograde shadow. And so this is going to feel more free, more released. We're allowed to kind of, it's basically like you've been trapped in like a playroom or a house on a rainy day. And this is, as we get to the end of Sagittarius season, it's like that first day where the weather's good and you get to go outside and you don't have to like play with the same toys or watch the same shows and movies. That is the vibe. We're being released from some confinement, released from this kind of forced retrospection and this kind of rebuilding and re-understanding and regrowth, which, while healthy and productive, not always fun. Then on the 20th, right before the sun goes into Capricorn, we have a new moon in Sagittarius. And if you notice, this is kind of how moments go in astrology. You end up having, because the way the cycle works, you'll end up having a bunch of moons at the same degree back to back to back. So we're kind of in a holding pattern with, new moons being at late degrees, 28, 27, 29, and then full moons being like right at those middling degrees, of like 13, 14, 15, 12. And so if you have planets around that area, know that they're going to get hit every time unless we're in an inconjunct. Um, the new moon in Sag has a lot of stuff going on. We have the square with those, with Saturn and Neptune. A lot of Sagittarius season really does feel as though, because of those squares, as though we're kind of tying in the oppositions. Because while we're not opposing Uranus anymore, every planet that hit the early degrees hit that early degree of Gemini, whether Uranus was there or not. It's kind of this tying up of loose ends before we go into these kind of major final ingresses next year. So if you're feeling frustrated that stuff just feels like it's on repeat, it kind of is. We're kind of getting this energy over and over and over again to drive those themes home, to push us for growth, to finalize energy. Very rarely is anything one pass in life. We're usually learning that lesson 2 to 3 times. Or, depending on your planets, if they're all at really late degrees, you learn those lessons all at once, all the time. And neither of those are really fun from personal experience. But yeah, that's the overview of Sagittarius season. Just know that we have these squares with the nodes going on. Also, this is all very past life centric. If you have kind of a strong past life thread or tend to meet karmic people, this will be a theme. And it'll be tied into this Scorpio Mercury retrograde moment as well. And then Mercury moving back through Sagittarius. So, write down your dreams. Any ancestors coming up, listen to them. This season, because of the squares, is actually a really good time to get readings from people. It doesn't have to be me, but if you want to get yourself a Christmas present, firstly, support people with small businesses, and secondly, with all of these squares, it is a good time to kind of pause and figure things out. I find that retrogrades are a really good time to kind of reconsider stuff and to get input from someone else. My kind of advice for readings is do them on special occasions and during a crisis, because do I usually say crisis? Like crises? During crises, no, plural. During a crisis or in the middle of crises, if you're experiencing multiple, because it's not really good to get readings 24/7. I want to use the term good. It isn't always productive to get readings 24/7, but in a pinch, in a place where you want to plan ahead or you need some extra guidance or you're just giving yourself a little treat, they're great. And Sagittarius season, I have a sense that a lot of us need it, me included. I get readings from other readers as well because I am not the bringer of all knowledge, of course. Anyways, that's the overview. We have some really nice kind of lighter stuff mixed in with some pretty intense things. But I am hopeful. I feel especially that the new and full moon is going to be really clearing and clarifying for a lot of us. If you don't know what you want, these lunations are really going to tell you. And they're also going to push you and inspire you to take action to get them, because that is the gift of Sagittarius. All right, my loves, this is kind of my overview of the astrology for Sagittarius season. If you have any questions, pop them in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you later.